I don't have as much footage as I'd like for you today because I lost some. Sorry about that, but I do have enough to give you a good chunk of what I did. There's just some key things for this yak killer. We have to get past them before, you know, we can do anything else. We could skip these pieces, but you know, the boat just wouldn't be as great as what I hopefully can make it, what we intend it to be. So one of those things is the transom. It's got a traditional treated piece of plywood in there. It's got to go. We're gonna rip that thing out and we're gonna replace it with a full synthetic transom from Coosa Board. Do a material review list and I'll show you what I did, and I'll try and make up for some of the lost footage. But this is a pretty educational video. In fact, if you're gonna put all the work into a boat like this, you really want this thing to last for a while. You really kind of want to consider this because it's a pretty good mod. I've been wanting to do a full synthetic transom for a while. I'll finally get to do one for you guys, so stay tuned. Here it is. Alright, so this is the piece of wood that came out. It's a very, very, very thick, uniquely thick piece of plywood. It is just under 3 inches. It's like just not a true 3-inch. But you can see all that white stuff. That's actual pitting and oxidation. And those same things mirror the back of the transom. So it was corroding. Was not doing very good. And a lot of that was simply because there was no paint, there was no external barrier coat between the transom and the piece of wood here that acted like its support. And that was really what caused it. So we're gonna go ahead and spray the transom, give it a little bit of a barrier coat. It's not gonna be a gigantic one, but it will be something that will at least hinder any sort of stuff, because no matter if this is treated or not, condensed water will eventually start corroding if it's not taken care of. So this is a full piece of Coosa Board that I got from Boat Outfitters. They're pretty cool. They actually hooked me up with a few pieces, and before that I actually bought a few pieces from them. $89 I think shipped, or it was like right at $100 shipped. It was like 15 bucks for shipping, like 80 bucks for the piece. Now if you get a 1/2 inch piece like this and you have a small boat like what I have, you can cut this into 3 pieces, which is what I did. And then I glued it together with marine epoxy with West Systems 105 50/50 mix. Now if your transom is a little bit bigger, then you probably would want to get a 3/4 inch piece. That way you only have to cut it twice to make a 1/2 inch. You may have to shave it, so a belt sander or a planer would maybe be a little ideal for parts of it. We will have to do some of that a little bit later. I'll show you. So there it is right there, the old transom. It's gone. And here are the 3 pieces that we cut out of that one sheet to make the new transom. Here's the West Systems 105 epoxy. We used a 205 hardener. There's also a 206 fast hardener, but I mean the 205 stuff's fine. You can actually get this at Boat US too. You can also order it online, and really any marine epoxy would work. In fact, I probably would find other stuff. I wasn't terribly happy with this stuff, but it will work. It does do what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to be more flexible. I think that's what separates regular epoxy from marine epoxy, is the fact that this stuff is more flexible over time. The other thing though is that it stays kind of tacky for a little longer than I would like. And I was not particularly happy about that, but it does form together, and this is how you would join Coosa together. You cannot do it with civil screws or wood glue. I never tried wood glue, but they tell you not to do it. It said to use epoxy, and that sticks the pieces together and joins them together quite nicely. What you do want to do is make sure you don't leave that stuff in a cup for too long, because it does get hot very much the more that it's on. So you kind of want to spread the stuff, or get it at least spread out evenly, that way it doesn't cure as fast. So we got this done. We're going to put some screws in place, but only to keep it there just steady so it doesn't shift, because it's going to take a while to cure. We're also going to use a series of clamps to leave the thing outside for a while. But right now, we are going to give a protective barrier between the transom, the new one, and the actual back aluminum plate. Now, this entire boat was painted with actually really good paint, really thick, robust paint, except for right there where the transom is. Go figure. Which means they painted right all over it once the transom was installed, and that's just going to lead to inevitable pitting. So I already self-etching. I used self-etching primer on it, prepped it, and we're just going to get a few coats of that with Petroleum High Performance enamel. This is the finished product. of the Coosa Board Transom. It actually took a long time for that glue to mix. I mean, it was a 50-50 mix. I don't know what the hell his problem was, but it took a long time. And even now, it's still like whatever. So we're gonna install this thing. Another part of the clip that I missed is that this is a full 3 inches. It's a true 3 inches, where the other piece we were replacing this with was just under 3 inches, which fit right underneath there with a metal plate. And that was the backing metal plate there. So it's going to fit a little tight. In fact, at the very top, I had to get a belt sander and a little one inch and a half section. I kind of just sanded it down to make sure that this metal plate would have a room to kind of fit and wedge in underneath the top. So fitting a little tight. So I'm beating it with a hammer ever so tactfully to try and just make sure it'll seat in the bottom. And then later on, I found that beating it with a hammer actually increased the ability to actually seat it in place correctly. Because the extra thickness is kind of making that top plate pop out a little bit, we're going to go ahead and run some screws into the Coosa board to try and tighten it down while I fasten it from the back. So this was here. And these were like the stock screws. They had this like rubber grommet thing put through the back in here, and there were 5 of them. Just very, very oddly done. I thought it was odd because, I mean, just what they were bolts with rubber grommets to kind of help weather seal or water seal them in there. But I want to say they have to be stock because this is a stock paint job. That was a very hard paint job to get off. And the front little plate there is stock also. I mean, those are stock holes, so I'm thinking Tracker just made them with these holes in there as the easiest way in. So always use SS hardware. This is just below the water line, so it's a little interesting to me, but it's not the biggest deal. But we're gonna have to put these back in, and that's about a 3/16 inch drill bit. So let's do it. Okay, turns out stock hardware, not long enough. Bummer. That's alright, we got better stuff. So, I have these 1/4 inch. These weren't going to cut it. And so what happened is I drilled out these with I think a 7/32. It's whatever drill bit that comes between a 3/16 and 1/4 bit. It's that one in the middle. And so what I did was when I used the 1/4 inch like screw, it actually self-tapped and threaded in to the aluminum just barely, not a whole lot, because obviously you can screw up stainless steel is kind of fragile compared to like regular steel. And it got through, and then it got through the other end that we prepped through. It really was pressure fit inside the Coosa, so it was the tightest fit we could get for the screw naturally. Plus we backed a little bit of there behind the washer with some 35200, which the washer squished in and naturally set itself in on. We did that all the way down. I could go, and so it's pretty tight in there. So I could go one step further and epoxy over these, but then I mean that's it for these screws. You'll never get them out unless you cut them off. That is an option, but I mean I'm putting this transom so it can be the last transom this boat ever uses. That's how we got them in. You don't have to seal this side. This side's not have water. So the other side is the side you really need to seal. We'll be cutting these off flush. That one was already naturally that size, and we're just missing one. I gotta go get more hardware. That's not a big deal. So this is in here. It's pretty good. More or less brand new. We have some holes here. I put a bunch of stupid holes in this. Trying to mess with those shallow water anchors a minute ago. And so I got an answer for that. My next thing though is I want to clean all this up, make sure the frame's securely attached to everything, and we're gonna paint this. Here it is. It's done. Here is the hardware inserted. This is the hole for the live well pump. We're gonna talk about what we're gonna do there. We're gonna make a detachable live well out of this boat. We were definitely gonna do it for this boat. It's mandatory because we don't need that thing in there the whole time because it's causes a lot of problems if you just have a live well on the boat like this small the whole time. But we are We got rid of most of the 3M 5200 backing that was around here because we're going to be painting this, and that stuff's going to distort the paint job. We actually spent a little bit of time trying to scrub the last of the primer and paint off this boat, but I tell you, the primer, whatever they use for this boat, super tough. This is after seriously grinding. Aircraft stripper, the citrus strip, this Jasco's paint and epoxy remover, which is better than both the other two, like, still didn't really pull a lot of this off. I'm gonna have to go over it again and then pressure wash it, get the rest of this stuff off and prep the hull, because what we want to do is we want to add the Gator Glide. It's too many Gators that I work with. But Gator Glide on this, that's a super slick epoxy. It's awesome stuff. It's supposed to really toughen up the bottom of the hull and make it really slick, and where it just kind of slides off stuff instead of stuff grabbing the aluminum and tearing it or denting it terribly. It's gonna pull it. So I can't wait to do that. And then everywhere else that's not this, like here in the sides, we're gonna go ahead and paint black because I really like black and green. It's gonna be my thing. Any boat I have is gonna be black and green, but this is why it's out. It's out of my garage. It's on here because we're gonna start prepping the holes. The last thing we have to really do before we can really just start chewing away at the awesome fabrication ideas that we have for this boat coming up very, very soon. Just sneak preview, we're also painting this one. This is supposed to be my elite, like, bass boat that I'm making. And we prepped the side of the hull. And then it got windy and I couldn't paint it. Like right now, I could probably paint it as soon as the sun goes down where it doesn't cause any paint distortions. But check this boat out. This boat's gonna be super sweet when I'm done with it. All right, there it was. There it is. We are like almost there. We're gonna get there. We're gonna make this thing awesome.